The village square buzzed with the usual commotion, traders shouting prices, chickens clucking underfoot, children weaving through carts and baskets. But amid the ordinary noise, something unusual drew the attention of passers-by. Near the old well, atop a makeshift crate, stood a man in worn, dusty clothes. His boots were cracked, his eyes sunken, and he held a crooked sign that read in fading red paint, "Daughters for marriage, no dowry needed." Beside him stood 3 girls, all clearly sisters. The eldest, perhaps 19, stood with her chin high, arms folded, jaw tight. Her face showed no fear, only defiance. The middle sister, a year or 2 younger, kept glancing toward the crowd, her lips pressed in an anxious line. The youngest, barely into her teens, clung to the middle sister's arm, her eyes wide and confused, darting from face to face. The crowd gathered slowly, curious. A few snickered, others whispered. Some leered. An older man with a sour smell and greedy eyes asked how much for all 3, as a package. The girls stiffened. The father, thin, trembling, clearly exhausted, lifted his hands. "I've no choice," he said aloud, voice cracking. "I can't feed them. Their mother's gone. The taxes took the farm. I've begged, borrowed, nothing left but this." From behind the circle of onlookers, a tall man stepped forward, broad-shouldered, plain-clothed, with sun-wrinkled skin and calm gray eyes. His name was Elias, though few here knew him well. A farmer from the outskirts, he rarely came to town, and never without purpose. He pushed through the small crowd, stopping just a few feet from the crate. His eyes swept over the girls, not with hunger or pity, but something quieter, something steadier. Compassion, maybe, or memory. "You're selling your daughters?" he asked, his voice low. The father looked down, ashamed. "No dowry, no land. They'll die if they stay with me." The eldest sister's voice rang out then, clear and sharp. "We're not for sale." Elias looked at her, met her gaze, and gave a small nod. "Didn't think you were." For a moment, there was silence. A few in the crowd chuckled nervously. One man muttered that the farmer should mind his own business. Elias ignored them. He turned to the father. "You don't want this. I know you don't." The man said nothing, only shook his head and sat down on the crate, burying his face in his hands. The middle sister looked at him and whispered something no one heard. Elias sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Then he looked back at the girls. "I have a farm," he said simply. "Plenty of food, a place to sleep, 3 sons, grown men. Not perfect, but good boys." The youngest girl peeked out from behind her sister, eyes curious. "You'll be safe," he said. "If you want to come." The eldest studied him. "And if we don't?" "You stay," Elias said. "I won't take anyone who doesn't want to be taken." There was another silence. The father looked up, his eyes shining with something like relief and something like guilt. "Please," he said hoarsely. "Take them. Give them a chance." Elias turned slightly, gesturing to his cart hitched nearby. "Up to you." The girls hesitated. Then, slowly, the eldest stepped off the crate. The others followed, hand in hand. No more words were spoken. They climbed into the cart, and as Elias led the horse forward, the crowd parted in silence. The old man watched them go, eyes wet, as 3 daughters disappeared into the dust of the road, not bought, not bartered, just taken to a better place. The cart creaked gently as it rolled along the winding dirt road that cut through fields of tall, golden wheat. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows and bathing the countryside in warm amber light. A cool breeze stirred the leaves in the trees, rustling through the silence between the 4 passengers. Elias held the reins loosely in his hands, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. He didn't speak unless he had to. He never was a man for filling quiet with unnecessary words. In the back of the cart, the 3 sisters sat huddled under a wool blanket he'd handed them before they left town. Though strangers only hours ago, they now leaned against one another as if their closeness might help anchor them in this unfamiliar chapter of their lives. The youngest, Mira, had dozed off, her head resting on Anya's shoulder. Anya stared out across the fields, trying to understand this man who had changed the direction of their lives without asking for anything in return. Leah, the eldest, sat upright, her eyes never straying far from Elias's back. She was waiting for the trick, the moment his kindness would crack and something darker would emerge. As they approached a small rise, the farmhouse came into view. Modest but sturdy, with a wide porch and smoke rising from its chimney. A red barn stood beside it, and in the distance, chickens pecked the earth while goats milled about lazily near a fenced pasture. 3 figures stood just outside the barn doors, 3 young men, all different in build and bearing, but clearly brothers. The tallest, broad-shouldered and serious-looking, stepped forward first, wiping his hands on his trousers. The second, leaner and with a quiet, cautious expression, stood back slightly. The third, cheerful-eyed with sun-bleached curls, waved awkwardly and smiled. Elias brought the cart to a stop and climbed down. The girls watched silently as he approached the young men and spoke to them in low tones. He gestured once toward the cart, then back to the house. None of his sons reacted with surprise or complaint, only mild confusion and curiosity. Then Elias turned back to the girls. "You're safe here," he said. "No one expects anything from you. You'll have your own room tonight. Food's hot on the stove." Leah narrowed her eyes. "What do you want from us?" Elias met her gaze. "Nothing you don't want to give." He paused, then motioned toward his sons. "These are my boys, Samuel, Jacob, and Eli. Good men. They work hard, and they've been raised to respect women. You'll get to know them in your own time. If you choose to stay, maybe things will grow from there. But it's your choice." Anya looked from Elias to the boys, and then to her sisters. Mira had woken and was looking at the youngest son, Eli, who still smiled, though he seemed unsure if he should. Leah stepped off the cart first, as she had before, always the one to lead. The others followed. The air smelled of hay, firewood, and evening stew. A dog barked somewhere near the house. The farm was quiet, but it felt lived in, like it had space not only for work, but for life. Elias turned and started walking toward the porch. "You hungry?" The girls didn't answer, but they followed him. Not because they were owned or commanded, but because, for the first time in a long time, someone had offered them a place without demand. And that, Leah thought, might be the beginning of something worth staying for. The days that followed unfolded slowly, like petals opening to morning light. Life on the farm was steady and simple, built on rhythm and routine, something the girls hadn't known in a long time. No harsh words, no hunger, no fear of the next day. Just work, warmth, and an unspoken invitation to belong. Each morning began with the rooster's crow. The girls, though unfamiliar with farm life, rose early and began helping where they could. Elias never ordered them about, never expected them to carry more than they were willing. Yet the work gave them purpose, and soon they each found their place. Leah, always the protector, took to working with the animals. She had a calm authority that even the stubborn goats seemed to respect. Samuel often worked beside her in the stables, silent but steady. He didn't talk much, but when he did, his words were honest and thoughtful. Slowly, Leah began to trust him, not just with the animals, but with her silence, and then, her voice. Anya discovered she had a knack for the fields. She liked the feel of soil in her hands and the sun on her face. Jacob, the quiet middle son, showed her how to plant in neat rows and how to judge the health of a crop by the color of its leaves. They often worked side by side, not saying much, yet finding comfort in the shared rhythm of motion. When he caught her laughing after slipping in a muddy patch, something in his expression softened, like spring melting ice. Mira, the youngest, roamed with a sense of wonder. The fear that once haunted her eyes had been replaced by curiosity. She followed Eli around the farm like a shadow, watching as he fixed fences, fed the chickens, or climbed trees just to show her the view. He made her laugh, even when she didn't want to, and always seemed to know when to stay close and when to give her space. Evenings were the quietest, and the warmest. The family gathered on the porch or near the hearth, sipping broth or tea, watching the sky change colors as the sun dipped below the hills. Elias would sometimes read aloud from a weathered book of poems, his voice slow and deliberate, like he was tasting every word. The girls listened, not because they had to, but because something about his voice made the world feel steady and kind. One night, as rain tapped gently on the roof, Mira curled up near the fire with a book in her lap. Anya sat nearby, mending a shirt. Leah stood at the window, arms crossed, watching the storm. "Do you think we'll stay?" Mira asked softly, not looking up. Anya didn't answer right away. Leah turned from the window, met her sister's eyes, and gave the smallest nod. "We're not just surviving anymore," she said. "We're living." There were still quiet moments of doubt. Trauma didn't disappear overnight, but the wounds were no longer bleeding, they were beginning to heal. Over time, laughter became common. Meals stretched longer. The girls began wearing ribbons in their hair again. They told stories about their mother, shared memories they had locked away, and started dreaming aloud about what they might build here, what life could be like if they let themselves truly belong. And all the while, Elias watched from a respectful distance, not as a rescuer seeking praise, but as a man simply grateful to see life return to the farm in ways he hadn't known it needed. The fields grew greener, the house fuller, and the air warmer, not because of the season, but because hope had come to stay. The sun rose early on the day of the weddings, bathing the farm in soft gold. A light mist curled through the grass as if even the earth was holding its breath. Chickens clucked lazily, goats bleated in the distance, and smoke curled from the chimney of the farmhouse. But today was not a day of chores or routine. Today was a day of new beginnings. The house bustled with gentle commotion. Inside, Mira sat in front of a small mirror propped on a wooden table, her hands nervously smoothing the fabric of her simple linen dress. It was the same one she wore on the day Elias brought them here, but now it had been lovingly cleaned and stitched with a delicate line of blue thread at the hem. Anya stood behind her, braiding her hair with a ribbon the color of wild violets. Leah watched from the doorway, already dressed, a wreath of fresh daisies in her dark hair. "You look like yourself again," Anya said softly to Mira, smiling. Mira turned and hugged her. "I feel like myself again." The men waited outside by the old oak tree, near the chapel Elias had helped the village rebuild years ago. It wasn't grand, just weathered wood and a bell that never quite rang right, but it stood solid and beautiful against the open sky. Guests from nearby farms and the village had gathered, many of them stunned to see how the girls had flourished. They remembered the day the cart rolled through the square. Now, they saw young women filled with life, walking forward on their own terms. Leah stepped down the porch steps first, her hand resting gently on Samuel's arm. He looked at her not with possession, but with awe. There had been no proposal, no kneeling, just a quiet understanding that had grown between them like something planted deep and slow. They had worked together, fought together, and now chose to stand beside each other for the rest of their lives. Anya and Jacob followed, his hand resting lightly on her back. She wore a smile that lit up her face, laughing at something he whispered in her ear. Their bond had bloomed like the spring, unexpected, vibrant, and filled with joy. Eli stood waiting at the bottom of the path, holding a tiny bouquet of wildflowers in trembling hands. Mira stepped carefully down the steps toward him, her bare feet brushing the grass, and he held out the flowers like a boy offering a secret. She took them with a grin, and he smiled so wide it made the whole crowd chuckle. Elias stood back beneath a tree, dressed in his best shirt, leaning on the old walking stick his father had carved. He didn't draw attention to himself. He didn't need to. The joy on his face said everything. As the three couples stood before the village elder, the wind picked up just slightly, lifting hair and hems and petals. Vows were spoken quietly, promises made not in grand speeches but in simple, steady words. "I choose you. I will stand beside you. I will build with you. I will never make you feel small again." When it was done, and the elder pronounced them husband and wife, bells rang, clumsy and off-key, but beautiful all the same. Applause broke out, cheers rising into the summer sky. The sisters turned and, one by one, embraced Elias, who could barely keep the tears from his eyes. "You saved us," Mira whispered as she hugged him. "No," Elias said, brushing her hair back. "You saved each other. I just opened the door." As the celebration spilled into the fields, with music and dancing and tables full of food, a figure appeared quietly at the edge of the crowd. It was the girl's father. He stood far off, hat in hand, eyes glistening. Leah saw him first. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away. She held his gaze. He nodded slowly, as if asking for forgiveness, then turned and walked back down the road. She watched him go, then turned back to her new family. The sky was deep blue, the wheat whispered in the breeze, and laughter filled the air. There had been no dowry, no deals, only choice, love, and dignity returned. Elias sat on the porch as evening fell, watching lanterns flicker across the field. For the first time in years, he felt the farm was truly alive. Not all heroes wore armor. Some just left their gates open, and let the broken in. And built something better, together.